Okay, so I'm going to have to remove a rumble. Hang on a second here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay. It should be coming up here in just a second. There's like a 20-second delay. So hello, everybody. Just give us a thumbs up if you can see us or hear us. It looks like we're live. Everybody, welcome. This is a prophecy update. A look back to 2025. I look forward to 2026. I'm with my good friend Pete Garcia, and I'm going to let Pete take the lead because it was Pete's idea. So, Pete, why don't you kind of start and lead us through the discussion? And I'll, of course, interrupt you as I think it's appropriate, which will be quite often, I'm sure.
Well, thanks, John. I thought about doing this. Well, I think last year we did it, but it was right around the time of the inauguration. So I knew that you and I had to do like a beginning of the year program because, I mean, 2025 was like just jam packed. I mean, just so much stuff happened. I had to go back and like put an outline together of everything that took place just in the year. And every month there was some major news.
Right.
You had January, you had the New Orleans truck attack. You had the truck that was blown up there on in Vegas, the Tesla truck where the guy unalived himself there. You had the wildfires in Los Angeles. And the most shocking thing to me about that whole Los Angeles wildfires was just the absolute incompetence of the city, state, government leadership in how unprepared they were to handle a crisis of the Palisades burning down and just the whole thing with that. And that was leading up into Trump's inauguration, which was shocking when he was there in the rotunda, and he had like the who's who of the tech billionaires all lined up behind him.
Then, yeah, it was like a couple $1 trillion of personal net worth standing there behind him at the tech bros and Trump at the inauguration.
Yeah. Then the next day you had the announcement of Operation Stargate. We can talk about that.
And you had also all of the Trump executive orders, mainly a lot of them undoing what Biden had done. And then it was like a flood. It was like a tsunami. It just kept growing and growing and growing. And that was just January. I mean, that was just in a few days. And the thing everybody needs to remember is we're still almost 3 weeks away from Trump's first anniversary of his second term.
It feels like he's crammed in 3 years into this 1 year, like it's.
Yeah, I'm like, turn off Truth Social and go play some golf,
Yeah.
and give us some rest, but it's sort of relentless. So let's talk about what we thought were, and by the way, we'll never scratch the surface on what happened this year. It was pretty amazing. And thank of all you in the chat. And by the way, I did ask people to send in money to Fellowship Bible Chapel, and a lot of you were very generous in responding. And so we were very, very grateful for that. It does help us to do what we do, including this and that type of thing. So I'm streaming, I think, on Telegram, X. I was going to do Rumble, but I forgot I set it up too soon and it got deleted. So I'll post it on Rumble later, and Facebook and YouTube. So plenty of places to get this. And again, we appreciate everybody taking their time out from watching the ridiculous college football playoffs, especially now that Ohio State is out of it. So I don't have to worry about that anymore. And as somebody in there says, hit the like, subscribe, share button, and all that type of thing. And leave a comment. We do have moderators, and please be kind. If we don't like it, we'll boot you. Anyway, so let's talk about. So let's look back 2027. I have to I have to put this up here because I took the time to do it.
Lisa says, yeah, Alabama got rolled.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. We don't really
I thought I was watching. I couldn't believe it was Indiana there. I was like, wow, that's
there we
pretty
go. So since I took the time to make up this graphic, and
I'm smiling, and you're serious.
Well, because I just wanted to make you look good. So anyway, so I know there's a stop screen in here someplace. There we go. Stop screen. Let me do this. I like this side by side a little bit better. Okay, so let's go. You start, and we'll talk about the things. And so we're trying to do everything that's Bible prophecy related. But and at this point, it's like everything is.
Everything is, yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So a lot of major events every month this year. In the past, I'd written, I'd always do a year in review, but I did it at the beginning of the year, forecasting. So this is kind of a mix of both, of looking back at just the jam-packed 2025, as well as looking ahead in 2026, what we think will happen. And so 2025, obviously for me, the beginning of the month was ominous with the mysterious fog. You had all the orbs, not orbs, but drones and orbs and all that stuff kind of flowing over the US and New Jersey and places. And that was causing a lot of hysteria. We still haven't really got a straight answer on that. Rolled into these apocalyptic wildfires there in Los Angeles with what was even scarier was the incompetence of, like I said earlier, the state and the city level leadership in response to that. And then that rolled into inauguration for Trump, which, the next day he announces Operation Stargate, which every prophecy student and teacher, everybody's spidey sensors are like, tingling, and everybody's like, what? And so we obviously know a little bit more about what that's supposed to look like in terms of the infrastructure, the data, the warehousing for all these data centers they're trying to build to enable what would later come as the Genesis Initiative, which that was announced, in October?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when it was announced, but it did
October, November.
Yeah.
But
and that probably was, I think, more significant than Project Stargate. Project Stargate was kind of like, well, we're gonna put these things together, and we're going to get financing and everything, but that's just kind of blown out of the water. And then, that kind of rolled into these massive increase in valuations of these AI companies.
Yeah.
NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, I think, there was one for a time, Larry Ellison's Oracle company. They're like hitting $5 trillion in valuation, which is like way more. Like one of those companies is way more valuable than all the stocks in Europe combined. It just doesn't make any sense. So I guess if you bought some of that, it's great that good for you.
Speaking
in
of
my
stock,
401k, I will confess I do own some of those stocks in my 401k. I got slaughtered a couple of years ago.
You just gotta follow Nancy Pelosi and just get on her trajectory, man.
Yeah, there should be like
Warren Buffett. She blew all those guys away.
Well, I mean, we should get an AI thing to do we should make like a hedge fund or a exchange traded fund or whatever they call those things of the congressional people. And so you can sort of pick the person you hate the most.
Yeah.
And make a lot of money off of them, at least while they're in office. And now I want to hear that she's doing pretty well is Ilhan Omar.
Yeah.
Whose father, by the way, so people don't know, her father was a general in the Somalian army that took part in a big genocide in Somalia many years ago. So you can look that up, the historical facts on that. And also it would help you to go look for all the protests about that actual genocide that took place. I'm sure there were a lot of protests about it that Ilhan Omar herself was participating in. So anyway, so back to the tech thing. So by the way, Pete and I are going to we're going to be involved in another prophecy roundtable on technocracy, technology, assuming Pete can join us, on January 14th, a little less than 2 weeks. Patrick Wood, Scott Townsend, Britchellette, Pete, and myself, maybe joined by somebody else too, if we don't have enough things to talk about. But so let's go back to we're talking about Project Stargate and Genesis.
So the way I understand Stargate is that it was securing the investment for the data warehouses, and then later on, the Genesis initiative was going to be the unleashing of all of these different science laboratories across the 17 different labs across the U.S. on top of any other AI-driven initiatives, whether it's academic, scientific. So the Stargate was the funding, and then it was also the securing of the warehouses or the data centers, the locations, the physical buildings to house these massive data centers so they could do the Genesis initiative later on. So like that was part A, and then the Genesis is part B. So they're linked in that way is my understanding of it. But the naming of these things is what kills me. Like it's the kind of the thing, if you think back to NASA missions, all the NASA missions were named after like Roman or Greek mythology.
Gemini, Apollo, Mercury.
And now all of the stuff here, at least with Trump and AI, it seems to be, and even geopolitics seems to be biblically related or have some type of kind of earth-centric religion based, like the Abraham Accords, the Genesis Initiative. I don't know how Stargate necessarily would fit into that, but you know what I mean? Like the naming conventions of these are interesting to me. I don't know why they name them that way, but I'm sure.
Yeah, who's doing the editing in the White House and
somebody's creative, somebody's getting creative.
I guess, sometimes I wonder if they're just trolling us, if they know we think about these things and we know that these will trigger us. So they just decided to do that. But even somebody in the comments know, even Putin does it. He names, his rocks, one of his missiles, Satan. And that type of thing. So I don't know. I don't know where it's all going. I know that you have data farms down there by you, don't you, in Texas?
Oh yeah, I'm sure they're the ones they were looking at building the big one. They're building a big one now out in Abilene, I think, which is about 2 hours west of here.
We have them all over in New Albany, in Ohio. Well, they're all in the suburbs around Columbus, and it's protecting our house prices. I mean, there's a lot of growth in the area, and a couple Sundays when I was in Israel, it took PM about an hour to get to church because they were moving giant transformers in to help out with the power plants that, or transformers that supply power to these things. So they had to shut down the roads and bring like 30 state cops escorting these things through town, and they have to drive through them. I mean, they're enormous, huge transformers. So that was about 3 or 4 Sundays in a row they were doing that. So I guess they figured people don't go to church on Sunday, but it's and I don't know where the end of it is. I mean, the numbers, when you look at it from a financial standpoint, the numbers don't seem to. Well, the numbers add up, but they're all bad. And it's like, I don't know that they can continue to build bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger things. Now, China's kind of taken the small size AI and sort of making it open source, and that's having a big impact on these other companies. So I don't know where it ends. I know that there's just no way that we have the power resources to give electricity to this. But what happened? Remember, they said the same thing about crypto. Remember that crypto was going to completely consume all the power, electricity resources on the planet. Whatever happened to that? So I don't know. I think that's. I think the chips and everything will become more efficient, but they just keep building bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and I don't know where it stops.
It'll probably take one of two things: either power generation will be the limiting factor for the growth of AI that will come to hamper us, or like you said, some type of initiative. Like I just learned today that the Israelis figured out how to generate power through their water pipes. They put these little, like a dam, or like how a dam, how that generates power with water going through the pressure and et cetera.
They have like micro turbines or something.
Micro turbines inside of their water pipes.
And it doesn't affect the water flow,
No,
but it generates electricity. That's interesting because I was in Israel a couple of times. So when you go to the Temple Mount, I'll be, and I don't know what your view on this is, but there's this view that the temple was really built in the city of David because that's where the Gihon Spring is, and that's where they have living water. But when you talk to Jewish people, by the way, that idea of the Temple Mount being down there is ridiculous. I'm sorry. And if you follow that, stop doing it and educate yourself on archaeology and that type of thing. There's no question where the Temple Mount is. And go to Israel. In fact, I'm doing a tour in September, October, a Sukkot tour. So you can drop me an email. I'll be posting it on FB Chapel website and other places, fbchapel.com. And we're going to go during Sukkot again, and we're going to go to some of these places. But like places like the Western Wall tunnels are just you haven't been there, have you, Pete?
I've been there.
To Israel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The Western Wall tunnel tours they blow your mind with all the building that took place. So you see the Western Wall Plaza, and you only see like 9% of what's there is what you see at the Western Wall. It goes all the way back through the Arab quarter of the old city, and they've excavated underneath. And it's just the structures and everything that they found down there, and the extension of the wall is just mind-blowing. But there are the way they did the pipe systems was, if you have a bigger pipe to a smaller pipe, it increases the speed of water flowing through the smaller pipe. And they did this like all the way from Hebron and other places, the Solomon pools at Efrat on the south side of Bethlehem, to the Temple Mount. And that made the water flow. It had living water, was flowing living water. So that kind of undermines this premise of this Temple Mount was in the city of David. And also, if you go there and you ask the archaeologists at the city of David, hey, have you found any evidence that there was a Temple Mount here? They will look at you like you've lost your mind. Like, how did somebody that would ask such a stupid question afford a ticket to come here? That's the way they sort of look at it.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I've heard that argument.
Israel does this amazing stuff. Like when we were there, they were pumping water into through desalination plants because they have a lot of gas now. Those take a lot of power. And then they were pumping water from the Mediterranean, desalinating it, and then pumping it into the Sea of Galilee. Because the Sea of Galilee was incredibly low, as low as anybody's ever seen it this year. But they do these things that are just so ingenious and amazing. And so by changing the size of the water pipes, they increase the flow. They runs micro turbines that create electricity. It's an amazing thing to see. And by the way, heard today just on the podcast, GDP in Israel was up 25% last year.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of water and innovation, think about how Israel continually innovates kind of life-giving technologies and technologies that enable like desalination or the drip irrigation, all the stuff that they've come up with over the years to make their country thrive is the same. That's the exact opposite of what Iran is. Iran is solely focused almost entirely on their military, ballistic missiles, as well as their nuclear technologies. And now what's led up to, jumping ahead, but what's led up to all of the protests and the unrest and potential collapse, I guess, of their Khomeini regime is the lack of water. They were in a severe drought, and they had no water for months on end. And they could have invested that money into technologies to help the people that actually live there. Instead, they just threw everything into this nuclear facilities and to funding terrorism abroad. So
it probably was worse than that, because I think that if you want to understand how the Iranian government works, probably the best movie to watch and to learn from that and learn from how Iran operates is The Godfather. Now, my wife hates that movie, but I think it's one of the greatest movies of all time. And they divided up the 5 boroughs in New York, and each had their own thing. And that's what they do. Like the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, they get this, the mullahs get this mullah gets this, so this Ayatollah gets this. And it's like a crime family. And one of the things they did was there was incredible corruption within the water supply system. So they had built massive reservoirs, a huge number of dams all across the country. And then what they did was they dammed up the rivers that fed, for example, there's this big lake in the northwest part of Iran. It's almost completely gone. Mm-hmm. And this is like Hoover Reservoir. It was one of the largest lakes in that part of in Asia. And it's pretty much gone, and it's now salt flats. And then that creates a toxic dust when the wind blows across the salt flats. But they pumped all the water out, and they dammed up the rivers coming in, so the lake dried up. So now so then they started planting a lot of crops like cotton and alfalfa and other things that need a lot of water. So they started pumping ancient underground aquifers, and they've drained those. Well, those things won't regenerate. It will take hundreds of years to regenerate the water there. And now what are they going to do? There's talk they want to move people from Tehran, which is maybe 16 million in the metro area of Tehran, to someplace else. Mm-hmm. It's insane. And it's causing a lot of what you see going on. And we'll talk a little bit more, I think, later about the Iranian protests, which I think are incredibly significant.
Well, let's go through April. I mean, a lot of stuff happened. Trump started his tariffs in February. We know that a lot of things happened in February in terms of Russia, Ukraine. Heathrow Airport had that massive power blackout, disrupting thousands of flights. But in April, we had the death of Pope Francis, who was no friend to Christianity. He was a socialist, Marxist, humanist. I don't know. He wasn't Christian.
Liberation theologian.
And then we get the selection of Leo, who was the first American Pope ever, I think, right? He's the only American Pope that we've ever had.
Right.
The Catholic Church has ever had. So that's interesting. And some brief conflicts in May with India, Pakistan. And I'm of the mindset that great war between India, Pakistan hasn't happened yet, that there will be, when World War breaks out, that will be a major flashpoint in the world, on top of what's just recently happened with China doing these provocative training exercises around Taiwan on the 29th and 30th of December. But like India, Pakistan, like that, when things kick off, that's going to be a major flashpoint in the world, and that's going to be very disruptive to that entire side of the world, and it will probably be responsible for breaking up the BRICS coalition. And the BRICS will have to reorganize into something else. But that was
I'm not sure I'm on board with. I mean, I know what the BRICS are trying to do, but I get these. I don't know. I guess they're investment type news, or they're sort of masquerading as news, but they're like, "Hey, buy my plan on how to invest in the coming crash." And it's been like 3-4 years now. They've been talking about, any day now, BRICS is going to completely destroy the U.S. dollar. We're going to go back on the gold system, and like all that stuff may happen. But I'm just saying is like, there's a lot of, it's almost like the Chicken Littles the sky is falling all the time. And the BRICS, while they have a lot of GDP, they have a lot of the world's population and that type of thing, I don't see the one thing they need is they need to agree on a replacement currency.
Yeah.
And I don't see those guys agreeing on anything ever. And I think your point, excellent point, that with these tensions that are arising, it's BRICS is a house of cards.
Yeah.
It's not the house
on
of
a
cards,
windy
it's a house
day.
of
On a
cards.
windy day.
Yeah. And so I don't see that it's going to last.
So you have Brazil, which politically is kind of tumultuous with the ouster of their former president
and imprisonment of Bolsonaro.
And then you have Russia, who obviously is the kind of the black sheep right now in the world in terms of their conflict with Ukraine. India, again, the most populous country in the world now, beating out China, but they have major flashpoints with both China and India, with Pakistan. So there's a lot of, and then you have obviously China, who has issues. I think China's economy is I'm not going to go so far as what's that guy's name that's always saying China is going to collapse? Peter
Gordon Chang.
Yeah, well,
the coming collapse of China.
There's a few of them that are talking about this, but I think China is very becomes. If you think about this in terms of investing, like you're not going to throw your money into something that's super risky unless you have that kind of money to spend. You want some money back on your investment. You want to make sure that you're investing wisely. People are not going to bet on an economy that one is faltering. Two, their demographics are going to be collapsing here in the next 10 years. And then three, as soon as Xi Jinping dies, and I think he's late 70s, early 80s, maybe, I don't know. He's up there, but he's like, he has gotten rid of every contender to his position so many ranks down that there's nobody really.
He's actually 72.
Oh, is he? I thought he was Trump's age.
You're too young to judge older people's age. Okay?
He's old. All I know is he's old.
He's like he's 6 months older than I am, for crying out loud.
Oh, he's ancient.
So Putin's a little bit older than him. Putin's, I think, 73. And Erdogan is 71. He's 2 days older than I am.
Xi is
younger.
He's had a lot of major health issues, but the thing is that there's no good replacement for him that anybody knows about, because he's gotten rid of anybody that could potentially replace him.
Well, he sort of has made it a big cult of personality. That's correct.
Well, so if he goes, obviously that's going to throw China into a tailspin. Or if they attack Taiwan, that's going to also throw. There's a lot of factors with China that make them a place you're not really wanting to park money into or invest into. I mean, a lot of the American businesses are pulling out because of all the what do they call it when they reverse engineer technology and steal your technology and make knockoffs. So China's kind of on the downside of that. And then you have South Africa, whose government is, now at odds with the US over the white farmers, and the collapsing of kind of that whole government system there is kind of in shambles. So BRICS, I at first I thought maybe this might be a contender. That was early on when BRICS first started out. And I've long since abandoned that idea that BRICS was going to amount to much of anything, simply because of how many problems each one of those countries has individually, let alone trying to come together cohesively and make some, replace the US dollar with some global currency, which they're not going to be able to do.
Okay, so here's there's a website I like to follow called Population Pyramid. And I first of all, I think they're way overstated on the amount of people in China. There's a lot of indications that they're probably smaller than India now, and they may have under 1 billion people. But if you look at the curve here on the right, like right here, you see this, so now they have 1.4 million, but you go out here to 2100, and I don't think we'll be here in 2100, so don't put those words in my mouth. They're less than half of what they are right now. and the age of look at the skewing of the population distribution. It's a bunch of old people, and that's already happening. You can see it happening in the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So the biggest chunk of the population is over 55. Well, you're not 55 yet, Pete, but you'll know you're not going to war when you're 55 unless you're Android enhanced or whatever it is, robot enhanced. So this in China, they've got terrible economic problems. They've been covering things over. Everything goes to Xi. So I think you're right. What happens if something happens to Xi? And this is all part of the wars and rumors of wars thing that we're going to see. And my question for you is, and I know I have friends that will disagree very strongly with this on this. Do you think China's really going to go after Taiwan, or is that a head fake? They're always big on deception and war. So are they gonna do that, or are they gonna maybe not do Taiwan?
I do think they are. I think Xi wants to do that before he departs from this earth. I think that's one of his long stated goals. But what was interesting about this drill, I want to say they've had somewhere around 7 of these really intense military drills where they go all the way around Taiwan. They've done 7 of them since Pelosi visited back in whatever year that was she went, 21, 22, somewhere in there. And they normally would put out any kind of a press release or any kind of a statement. It was, do not, there will be no independence. What did I write? Independence interference or interference from independence-minded parties. What this time when they released the statement, it was there will be no interference from external interference allowed or something to that effect. So they changed the verbiage on that from the folks on Taiwan to now the parties outside of Taiwan. And I think the change has happened primarily because of the security agreement deal we did with Japan. And then Japan's new prime minister, and she stated that Taiwan's, basically linking Taiwan's freedom and their economic and political freedom with Japan's freedom. And that was a bridge too far for China. So now I think China's flexing very hard. And the U.S. has kept forces in Okinawa. They were supposed to move them to Guam. They ended up keeping them there in Okinawa. So I would not be surprised if China actually does try to take some type of more provocative action. This is the closest they've come to the actual sovereign airspace and sea space for Taiwan in any of these drills they've ever done. So they're getting dangerously close to triggering some type of military response to China. So I think that's one of those major items that the U.S. DoD and basically the entire U.S. government is focused on making. Now, I'm not saying that China is going to attack Taiwan in 26. I'm just saying what they just did here in the last day or two has been the most provocative that they've ever done thus far. And they've changed the language. So
you're a former military guy. I'm not. How successful do you think a Chinese invasion of Taiwan would be?
It depends. Well, so Taiwan's basically gone through this idea of creating them, they're basically becoming a porcupine, right? That's their defense, is to become a porcupine. They've got so many defensive measures in place, as well as you look at all the rings of layered defenses that the Western powers have against China. I think that if China has it in the mind to either they're going to belong to us or they're not going to belong to anybody, if they have that mindset, they could descend in wave after wave after wave of drones and basically destroy Taiwan and reduce it down to a parking lot if they wanted to, before the U.S. or the West could really respond in any kind of situation. And I think it depends on how far down or how desperate China gets economically, demographically. I'm sure Xi is aware of their problems. I don't know unless people are too scared to tell him, which may be the case as well. But like they have,
I remember that old guy that had been in G's position at one point, and he got kind of walked out of a big state dinner.
Yeah,
nobody's ever seen that guy again. So that was a couple of years ago.
So I think that that it depends on how desperate they get in this coming year. And obviously, we don't, have a crystal ball and can see into the future, but they're the youngest generation. Like you had that demographic chart up. The one thing that's not talked about is this idea called Bailon, which is the Generation Z and Generation Alpha have embraced as who cares? It's basically they're gonna protest silently by doing the very bare minimum in everything that they do because they don't see a future. They don't see themselves having a future with the way things are there. So why bother? That's the whole mindset of that generation.
So reports that I've seen, a guy who covers China demographics a lot is a guy named Peter Zion. Whether you like him or not, I think he's pretty spot on. In parts of China, so you need 2.1 births per female to stay even. In major cities of China now, the fertility rate is not 2.1, it's 0.2.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's happening all over the world. And I mean, so I wonder how this plays into all these things we talk about in Bible prophecy, because I don't know when the end date is, but then this is something that the world has never, ever faced in this type of situation. And what happens with AI if it takes away 40% of white collar jobs or 50% of white collar jobs, which it very well could do? What does that do to a younger generation that doesn't want to have babies anyway?
This could be the Romans 11:25. The fullness of the Gentiles has come in. Maybe I mean we've all struggled with this. What does that mean exactly?
Right.
But maybe there's a certain population number that's known only to God, and now things are tapering off at such a shocking rate that most Western nations, I don't think any Western nation right now is above that 2.1 ratio. I think every one of us, the only way the U.S. had even maintained that same level was through illegal immigration.
Right.
Once that stems off, or once that's been turned off, which it has, that's going to, if we start calculating the numbers correctly, that's why Elon Musk is always going on and on about the real threat to humanity is not overpopulation, it's underpopulation, that we are going to quickly be in the situation where China is. China,
he's doing his part. He has like 13 kids.
Hey, I did my part. I have 5 kids.
Okay.
Well, they have, first of all, they have a significant male to female ratio, obviously, because of the one child policy they had for decades. That's completely skewed their demographics. You have a lot of young Chinese men.
So I did, by the way, I did study that.
Yeah.
And they had a abortion policy in India that also favored male children. Mm-hmm. And you had the favoring of male children in China. And between those two countries, I mean, you go out another 10 years, and what I've read shows that between those two countries, they'll have around 150 to 200 million males with no prospect of a wife.
That's right. And that makes a country militaristic. That's what Japan was in back in the turn of the 20th century. You had a huge male to female ratio. And what did Japan do? They became militaristic. They became expansionist. And that's why they began conquering the rest of Asia, because they needed resources and they could for the industrial age, and men needed wives, and they needed the prospect to go out and just take women to have babies.
So I'm going to bring up the population pyramid on Japan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here we go with Japan. You see their population decline up here. Okay. So now they're already losing 1 million, 2 million people a year. So we're here at 2025. So they peaked at 130 million. Now they're down to 125 million, they say. But look at what they look like in 2100. it's like, and then the population pyramid, it's all skewed older people. There are no kids. And this is going to, by the way, this is going to happen much more quickly than anybody thinks.
Yeah.
Nobody's got a model that can do this. But I mean, so this is Japan. And, you know, you've got this aging population. They sell more adult diapers in China or in Japan for years, for over a decade, than they have baby diapers. By the way, I also heard Wall Street Journal had a thing. Chinese billionaires have come to America and hired surrogate mothers.
Yeah.
And one guy hired 100 women to have his baby. The problem is they're all American citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, now I don't think China can sustain that all the way across their population, but, and then of course we lose the whole thing is insane.
Well, that's why the whole idea of this technology I think they're developing in Germany is the artificial wombs.
Right.
Yeah, that whole thing is becoming a real technology and a real prospect because of this problem that's a lot of nations are running into, is that they realize, hey, we are not producing enough replacements for us, so they can create these artificial wombs, and they can put 100 in a room, or however many they put in a warehouse, whatever, and start growing humans. I mean, you think about how days of Noah that is. I mean, you're talking about just like they're trying to come up with the solutions to all these problems that we've created through these Luciferian policies like abortion on demand, one-child policies, all that kind of stuff that's been ongoing for the last 100+ years. But like I said, you have a young generation that has no prospect of getting married, and there's no future for them. So they basically have just given up right now. So if you look at that pyramid again for China, I mean, really, you start at like 49, that 49 ratio, and go up, and those people are not reproducing. Any of that whole segment of society is not. They're out of the age of reproduction. So you can see how problematic. And I think with even by the time 2050 rolls around, Peter Zeihan was the guy I was thinking of, but even he's saying projecting by 2050, I mean, even halfway there, Russia and China are in, serious demographic freefall, which means that both Putin and Xi Jinping now realize if they don't do something now, it's going to be too late by the time 2050 rolls, or even by the 2040s rolls around, it's going to be too late. So I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the aggressive posturing that we're seeing now with them. And so I do think 26 will be far more tumultuous geopolitically than 2025 was even.
Well, that also, if you remember the hot mic conversation that Xi Jinping and Putin and baby Kim, I think, were having, was like, well, we're gonna harvest organs and live to 150.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out.
Okay, start with your own, I guess. I don't know.
Well, back to our timeline. We had in June, we had Operation what was it? Midnight
Rising
Thunder,
Lion.
where Israel strikes Iran for
Rising Lion.
Rising Lion. And then the U.S. jumps in at the end and pancakes all the Natanz and all these nuclear facilities, places that they had. And so then there was that escalation there for.
By the way,
12 days.
The Tehran Times said that Iran won that war.
Yeah, of course.
But
the significant thing, the most significant thing about that, which I think leads directly to where we are today with Iran, is that it showed the world how weak Iran actually was, and it showed the people of Iran how weak the regime was and their inability to even respond to these kinds of attacks. And not only did it show the world, but also Israel was very successful in taking out, all the echelons of political leadership within the IRGC, and as well as a lot of their military leadership. I mean, I don't know. The only guy I don't know who's where is Ahmadinejad. I don't know if he's still alive or if he was taken out. I don't know that he died. I haven't heard anything.
He did not. I think he's still around.
But we know Khomeini left Tehran, or it's reported that he's left Tehran. A lot of the mullahs that were part of the crime syndicate there in the leadership a guy was driving in 2C TV. He was driving by showing the video. This guy was changing out of his mullah clothes and just putting on like regular clothes because he didn't want to get spotted or whatever. And so I think they're done, but we'll get into 2026. But so that was in July, that the strike there. Obviously, August, OpenAI releases GPT-5, which, I mean, we can just see how fast, and I talked about this with Pastor Brad Reeves a couple weeks ago, but we looked at what was significant about 2025 was that AI went from being kind of this novelty tool that people use to do whatever to now it's being incorporated into military systems, into government systems, into federal systems. It's being put into science, academia, basically all the military systems themselves. And I think Peter Thiel's, I'm blanking on his, not Optimus. It's the crystal ball from Lord of the Rings. I'll think about it in a second, but that is being incorporated into a lot of the military systems. You've got Lucky Palmer from Anduril, who's creating this. They're redefining a lot of the techno. I mean, his stuff is mind blowing.
We're okay with it though here in Columbus because he's doing it on the south side of Columbus. So
who is
Palmer Lucky?
Palmer
Anduril. He's building a huge drone factory down at the old Rickenbacker Air Force Base. This is one of the pictures of the year, I think, that came up with Israel's attack on Iran back in June. This was they had a big funeral, so they stacked them like cordwood, I guess is what the thing would be. So that was they took out. I don't know how they did this. They said this operation was planned for 20 years. So anyway,
but
go ahead.
I'm sorry, that if I said Lucky Palmer, I meant Palmer Lucky.
Right.
But he's got this. So he's got Anduril, which is his a lot of his, I think, his drone programs. But he came out with this helmet for soldiers called it basically gives you a God's eye view. So traditionally in the Army, if you had, or even the Marines, you would wear a helmet and you'd have to have your night vision goggles mounted to the front of your helmet. And then you'd have to wear like a weight pack on the back of your helmet to counter the weight, right? And by the time you start wearing all your equipment, you're talking about 50, 60 pounds worth of gear, and it just slowed you down. And then you had to carry around, if you had a drone overhead, you're flying a drone, you had to have like a tablet. And so now you're not looking around, you're looking down at your tablet. So it was very dangerous for soldiers to go out with the traditional stuff that I had, like stuff we wore in the war on terror kind of stuff. His helmet now incorporates these goggles that you wear, and you basically you get all these different modes of sight. I think it's called the Eagle Eye or something is the name of the helmet stuff that he has. And not only can you control the drone, where it looks and stuff by where you look, it gives you like the God's eye view of everything. And then you can flip to different modes of sight, like FLIR, white hot, black hot, thermal heating, all the different kinds of vision you can see at night. I mean, it is incredible.
It's kind of like Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly. Except you're not wearing the iron suit, but you have the helmet on with the like these shades, these goggles that you can wear, and some of them are like full face panels.
Right.
Your face is covered up, but like you can see everything, day, night, fog, whatever, and you're seeing it, and you're connected to the drone above you. So the nature of warfare is radically and exponentially changing in a way that I think. When these types of exciting types of technologies come out, governments want to use them. So that to me promotes this idea. And then this Fury drone, which is like it looks like kind of SR-71, like a mini SR-71, but it's unmanned. And then, that thing's going to be rolled out. And so anyways, all that to say is that the military technology is just leaps and bounds, and AI is being incorporated to all of that stuff. And So it went from being a novelty to now being almost authoritative, and it's going to just keep being put into everything, all the different systems. So that was significant to me for 2025. September, we obviously had the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination, which kind of reshaped the American political landscape, and we see the rise of this kind of I don't want to say Christian nationalism, but it is. I mean, I'm a patriot, but like I don't think that the U.S. is. I mean, I don't see us inside of the 70th week as the world superpower, and I know some people do, or they might see us as Babylon. I don't. However, there's this schism. We see this major schism kind of opening up within the conservative circles between America First, and then tying the Christian church into that, trying to take the Seven Mountain Mandate kind of thing. And then you have, and even Kirk was, tied in with Curtis Yarvin, the dude that's tied with J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel, the guy that believes that we should get rid of the Constitution. We should have a kind of a monarchy. So anyways, you've got guys like that are breaking the MAGA camp apart this direction. And so his death was lit a firestorm of responses from across the political spectrum that to me is kind of fractured the MAGA movement in a way that was kind of unforeseen, in the same way that October 7th fractured the conservative right.
This is kind of interesting because you and we did a conference in Rockwall back in September, about around 22nd or 23rd. And Charlie was assassinated on September 10th.
Mm-hmm.
And the day before, Israel had done an attack on Gettr in Doha.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like, it was like, you cannot keep up with all the stuff that happens on a day-to-day basis. Let's talk about Charlie just a little bit, because I don't want to get into who did it. Everybody's got their opinion. I will say this from a trial lawyer perspective, that people like Candace Owens and others who are running around throwing out all of these different theories, which people seem to latch onto, even though they're blown completely to smithereens in a couple of days. I personally, my prediction is that no one will ever be convicted of killing Charlie Kirk, because there's not a jury in the world that will not be impacted by that. Now,
right.
Maybe we'll do, somebody mentioned this, there was a question in the comments about AI, and they want to get rid of jury trials and one of the places they want to start doing this and using AI instead of a jury is in the UK. So maybe we'll do the trial of the death of Charlie Kirk will be tried by AI, because the jury pool has been so contaminated with all these different theories.
That's scary, because I just today I looked up on ChatGPT. I looked up the death of Charlie Kirk, and it said it didn't happen. I was like, what? I was like I don't know if you could see that or not. I said, when was the date of Charlie Kirk? I was trying to get the September date, and it says there was bolded. No assassination of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is alive. There is no NBC News article. And I just put the NBC News link to it. There is no NBC News article titled "What to Know About Charlie Kirk's Assassination." The URL you posted does not correspond to a real NBC News report. No AP, Reuters, PBS, NBC, ABC, CBS. So then I got a Reuters, and I put the Reuters in there, and it says, "Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I should not have doubled down on this." I was like, you are insane.
Well, so 25 years ago, I did a talk at a church conference about the coming effect of postmodernism on the church. That, everybody had their own truth. Truth was based on feelings. And it was around that time that trial practice seminars changed from this is the best way to present your evidence and a persuasive way to present your evidence to this is how you appeal to people's emotions. It changed. While I was a lawyer in my 45-year career, about halfway through, it changed. And so now we have that, not only have that affecting the church, but now we have, I'm telling you, I don't know when the last time I tried a jury trial was. It's probably 15 years ago, but because now nobody tries cases, but that's another thing. I'm just telling you, Pete, it's troubling beyond belief that you have these postmodern people on your juries now, because you can't appeal to them with facts and that type of thing. And we with social media, it's infinitely worse than it was when I was talking about this 25 years ago. I don't know. I mean, I'm glad I'm an old guy a lot of days.
Well, to continue on, we had
Okay.
the Gen Z protest over the attempted overthrow in Nepal. Do you remember that the young folks tried to overthrow their government in Nepal? I don't know what happened to that since then, but then we began our strikes, our U.S. strikes on Venezuela. The drug boats started back in September. Trump got the Gaza ceasefire in October. The major fighting, and then they got most of the hostages released. I think they're waiting on the body or remains of one Israeli soldier that has not been released yet. And then you had the kind of the formation of the Syrian parliamentary with Al-Jilani getting, I don't know, taking official power there. And then we began the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. So, and it was right at the same time that 3i Atlas was coming close to the Earth, and we were supposed to be able to get footage of it from NASA, but NASA obviously didn't have the money to go snap pictures or whatever. So a lot of
whatever happened to that thing anyway?
It's on its way out to Jupiter, but so it's still not acting like a comet. So it still has an anti-tail. It has changed colors like four or five different times. I mean, when it was the furthest out, it was red. And then as it got closer to the sun, it changed to blue. It's usually comets, when they get closer to the sun, they change to red because of the heat, the fire, etc. But it reversed colors. And then on the way back out, it changed to like gold. And then it was green. It was green. And then I forget what color it is now. But now it has three different jet streams coming out of it. The Hubble was able to photograph it, and they can do their spectrometer, whatever, the way that they film it or whatever. You know,
is that Hubble thing still working?
Yeah, apparently it's still working.
I mean, it was supposed to be done like 20 years ago. And now I hear there's another one up there that's like
James Webb. Or no, that's the telescope, isn't it?
It's like something. It's like a 2 trillion pixel camera that they have taking pictures of stuff up there.
So, anyways, it's still out there. It's changing speeds. It's doing all kind of weird stuff. So yeah, so 3i Atlas is definitely the weirdest interstellar object we've seen thus far. But as Mondo would say, you know, we have an infinitely small pool to look at. You know, we're looking at the three that we've recorded since Oumuamua back in 2017. Out of how many that have actually come into our solar system, we don't know. It could have been thousands. So we're only looking at 3 versus thousands. But, you know, at least the 3 that we've seen and been able to film and to look at, they've Oumuamua and 3i Atlas have done some really bizarre things. And Oumuamua was more asteroid. It was like a cigar-shaped asteroid. And just real quick, the weird thing on that was like it was like a cigar shape, right? So it was tumbling as it was going into perihelion as it's getting ready to go around the sun. And the thing is, as it sped up, the tumble rate never changed. So it was tumbling 3 times per every 24 hours. And then it incredibly speeds up, but the tumble rate doesn't get any faster. It stays at 3 tumbles per every 24 hours. So weird stuff happening with this in the heavens. I don't know what to think of it. I mean, I'm not saying that 3i Atlas is a mothership or anything like that, but it's definitely not like a normal comet that we've seen. So And then we've had, let's see, the Bondi Beach in December, the mass shooting there on Hanukkah, the Hanukkah festival that they had. And then we've had the Chinese flexing there in Taiwan here in the 29th and 30th. And I'm leaving a ton of stuff out, but I mean, just all the stuff that's happened this year has been insane. I mean, it's been a jam-packed year. And we thought 2024 was a jam-packed year. It was, with the election cycle and the Trump getting shot in Ohio Pennsylvania, and just all the other stuff. I mean, it's just been.
So let me go through. So we'll kind of interrupt this, and we'll talk a little bit about 2026. We could go for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But so let me just go with a few questions that have come in, and thanks to our great moderators who are sending me these. A friend just told me that the New York Mayor Mondami says anyone selling property in New York City must first offer to sell to the city. Is this correct and legal? And the answer is, I don't know that. There are a lot of nutty ideas out there in left-wing blue cities like New York, like Los Angeles, like San Francisco. In Los Angeles now, in Beverly Hills, so let's say you build a condominium complex or neighborhood, a certain percentage of that neighborhood has to be set as, let's say it's a condominium. The average price of the condominium is $8 million. A certain amount of that has to be set aside for lower income rental.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the rentals on those are like $15,000 to $20,000 a month, which people can't afford anyway, but they don't pay the HOA fees. And people are paying HOA fees on these condominiums in Beverly Hills of like $110,000 or $120,000 per month. And they don't even live there most of the time. So the only people that are living in the condominium are lower income people that couldn't afford to live. It's insanity. It's absolute insanity.
They do that here.
Huh?
They do the same thing here.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like in Austin and that type of thing, or?
Well, in Denton, yeah, a lot of these new apartment complexes. I mean, the one I'm in now is not like that, but some of the other ones I've looked at coming back from Kentucky, I didn't understand. I didn't know what it meant. It's talking about. I don't forget the I've got it here, the income, but some of them I didn't qualify because I made too much, and so I was like, well, what's the salary? What's the threshold? I think the threshold was you can't make more than like say $55,000 a year or $60,000 a year or something like that. So it was like I didn't qualify, and then I was thinking, like, I grew up in Section 8 housing. When we moved to San Antonio when I was a kid, we didn't know what Section 8 housing was. It was a brand new neighborhood in the south side of San Antonio. And we moved from Galveston up there. My parents were going to go to seminary, and my dad was doing construction. And so we moved into this brand new neighborhood, and within 4 years we had to move because the crime was so bad. I mean, we had gang fights in the streets. Like within 2 years, the whole place was completely run down. So I was like, I'm not living in apartments like that, because like I know how fast things go downhill real quick. So I was like, yeah, you can keep that. So anyways, yeah, it's
sort of reverse colonialism almost. It's in San Francisco, they're running $1 billion deficit, and they just signed into. They set up a fund to give people that are owed reparations for slavery $5 million each. So, and they didn't even have slaves in California, by the way. It's the whole world is crazy. So I don't know what Mamdani is doing. I do know there was a headline in the Washington Post where he was, of course, he was sworn in on a Quran, and they said it was full of symbolism. There was also a thing that this Washington Post reporting on it, that this was a a great picture of the changing Muslim demographics of New York City is why he got elected. In Mondami's New York, Muslims have become a political and demographic force. That's New York City.
I know that around 2010, I looked this up earlier, 2010, the commercial real estate vacancy rate was around 10%, and it's about 25% now. I expect that a lot of businesses, a lot of places on Wall Street, corporate America are going to be vacating New York City. So it'd be interesting to look at the vacancy rate now, January 1st, and what it's going to look like at the end of this first year of Mamdani in office. I bet it's going to be easily 30, 35%, where businesses are leaving because of how unfriendly the city politics are.
It does not make any sense. So somebody asked you about trial by jury in the UK. We sort of answered that. I don't know how it's going to do this. Somebody said, so here's a question about Iran. What's going on in Iran?
So
go ahead.
So here's what's, the last couple of years, even during Obama's time, there were protests in Iran that looked like the regime was starting to lose control. But then Obama, secretly, first of all, he did not encourage or support the protesters, but then he backdoored, $400 million or $400 billion to Iran on cash, on pallets, in the middle of the night that got shipped to Iran. Then Trump comes in. I think there was another series of protests somewhere in the neighborhood of 2019, 2020. And then they've had another series here a few years back. But most of these protests were started by the young folks. And they mostly centered in like the major urban areas of like Tehran. Well, this time the protest began with the working class. And it wasn't just located in Tehran, it was all over Iran. I mean, it was every city, every place was in this. So this is after the attacks of Israel and the US back in June, July. It completely weakened the IRGC, as well as showing the world and showing the Iranian people how weak their government actually was. So I think between that and the drought, the lack of water, the collapsing currency, the rial, as well as just the decimation of leadership, they've been bringing in like these guys that are protesting, and they're starting to chant, Rez Pahlavi, who is their
the son of the Shah,
son of the Shah, Prince. And he is encouraging them. You've got Trump now encouraging them. Israel is encouraging them, saying, hey, we stand with the people of Iran. So it looks like this time it's going to actually work. And so Khamenei, last I heard, was fleeing Tehran. A lot of the IRGC forces that they're using are not even, I don't know if it's the IRGC, maybe the Basiji, but whoever their law enforcement they've got there in the city, they don't even speak Farsi. They're not even Farsi speakers. So they're shipping in people to act as militias there in Iran that are from like Iraq and other places that aren't native speakers. So it looks like this is kind of the last legs of the Khamenei regime. So it'll be interesting to watch. And there's no real good place for him to go to. He's not, can he go to Russia? I mean, go hang out with Bashar al-Assad? I don't know. I don't think so.
I don't know. I was listening to a very good interview by my friend Duran Spielman, who has a podcast called True East on JNS. You should go look it up and listen to it. He was interviewing Harold Rode. Harold Rode is like a national treasure on the Middle East. I don't know how old he is. He's getting up there. He's probably younger than I am, but he seems to be getting up there. But he lived in Iran. He said that the revolution, so they have different ethnic groups in Iran. You have the people who speak Farsi, you have Azeris, you have this ethnic group, that ethnic group. And he used kind of an interesting term. He called them the Bazaris, the people who run the bazaars, the businesses in Iran. And back at the time of the revolution, he was living in Iran, when Khomeini came in, and Khomeini said that, or he said that the shop owners threw in with Khomeini. And once they threw in with Khomeini, it was pretty much a done deal because they wield an incredible amount of power. And the economy, the price, the value of the currency is plummeting. And you might buy something at noon, and within 10 hours it's worth half of what it was you paid for it.
Yeah.
And so what Harold Rowe called the Bazaris seemed to be on board with the people in the protest. And he did say in this interview, I think it went up yesterday, he said, this is very significant. This is different because the Bazaris have joined in with the people that are protesting. So that's significant. Somebody said, with no water, how do they cool their nuclear facilities? Because they do have one down at Bushehr. And the answer is, I don't know how they do that. And better hope that they are, because if it melts down, that causes a problem.
Yeah.
But they did have some rain, but it's not. I was reading a report in the Iranian newspaper, and it's not near enough to cover anything that they wanted to have covered in terms of getting aquifers replenished or lakes replenished. And most of the lakes are down, some of them down to like 10% of what they would be in normal times. It's a very, very grave crisis. And we could see the Iranian regime fall. And what does that mean in Bible prophecy? Because we talk about Persia and that type of thing. What do you think?
Well, we'd have to look at the ancient boundaries of Persia, which I think parts of Iraq would incorporate that. But I was thinking about that too. Let's just say that hypothetically that Pahlavi gets in, and he gets a lot of backing from Western nations to help them restart the government, bring in resources, et cetera, to include Israel. I mean, Israel would help them, set up some technologies, et cetera. The only thing I can think of is that you'll have a great number of the former leadership in Iran that will flee to other places, but you still have the Gog and Magog, which to me, this is going to be a call to arms for all Muslims, because you have both Sunni and Shia coming together, marching against Israel at the right time, which I think that will be right after the rapture. I don't know what you think on that, but I think it'll be a global crisis. The West will be either being collapsed or kind of distracted and not able to respond in support of Israel. But Israel now just came out with their iron laser, or whatever, the iron
beam.
So it seems to me that you're going to have all the former Soviet satellite states, like all the stands, Kurdistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, etc. You're going to have Muslims from all those areas, plus all the areas from like Russia, Chechnya, Dagestan, all the Muslim populations within Russia proper, as well as Muslims coming out of Europe. You're going to have Muslims coming out of Africa, from Sudan, from Somalia, from Libya, from probably all the places there along the nose. So we're looking at the ancient boundaries of these countries. It still incorporates a large area that seems to be coming from like kind of the 4 different cardinal directions. So they're all going to amass against Israel at that time. So I don't know. I mean, maybe something happens between now and then. The new government sets up. Maybe that new government collapses, or is overthrown by some type of military coup d'état, or whatever. Who knows? I mean, for instance, we didn't think Hezbollah would fall as fast as they did. I mean, I don't think anybody had that on their prophecy bingo cards of Nasrallah getting taken out. or the beepers, taking out, most of the leadership of Hezbollah. Like none of us really saw that coming.
Yeah, it's ancient history. That was like a year and 3 months ago.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like everybody, even the Israelis thought that any type of conflict with Hezbollah would be like this very long, protracted, they were more concerned about Hezbollah jumping in on October 8th or 7th and 8th than they were really with Hamas. Hamas was always the minor threat and Hezbollah was always the major threat, but they were able to basically decapitate Hezbollah very quickly. And now this thing with Hamas has dragged on and on for 2+ years. So it's really hard to say how Iran, or maybe it renames itself or something, Persia, on this back end. But I think that there's still going to be enough people and or leadership coming that are Persian that will lead their forces against one group out of many groups that will come against Israel at that time.
So here's somebody, Stacy, is saying in the chat, 2CTV, which is actually a pretty good YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's an Iranian guy, has reported that the IRGC has lost control of every major city in Iran and Khomeini is leaving Tehran. So we see these things are kind of fluid. I don't know how much I should say here, because I've been talking a lot about Turkey, and the talk I did down in Texas was on Turkey. And I think this is very significant. And I keep going back to this ram goat thing that we see in Daniel 8.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of tricky sometimes because these prophecies, are they prophecies that are going to have double fulfillment?
Right.
And the answer is, I don't know. There's, they're not, the prophecies don't come with the tag, this one's going to be fulfilled twice. And then there's
nice if they did.
Yeah, I know, it'd be really great. Of course, then we wouldn't have anything to argue about.
That's right.
And it would also say like, oh, but you're missing that there's a pattern, a prophetic pattern here that you should be picking up on. So I don't know. So let me share a couple screens here.
I agree that Turkey is becoming the preeminent threat.
Okay, so I'm going to explain that in just a second. So this is a screen that's very important. And I didn't even use this in my talks on Turkey that I did recently. So this is the Umayyad dynasty. It was back in like the 6th. It was the early Islamic empire, based out of Persia. And you can see it covered a lot of territory. And in Islamic thought, a lot of people think that the reason that Islam grew so fast was because it was pure Islam. And so then other countries came in and they took over. So let's see here. We've got, see if this still works. I'm going to have to go to a different screen. Okay, so this is the Ottoman Empire at its greatest extent. So I go to my YouTube channel, and I did a big talk on Turkey on Sunday during the sermon hour at FBC. And because I think what's going on there is very significant. And then today I heard an interview with a Middle East expert named David Wormser. And David Wormser is a security expert. He's with the Mizgov Institute. And he was talking about the fact, and this is something that happened a year ago today. And I've talked about it. I talk about it all the time to the point where I'm probably a little bit obnoxious about it. But
not you.
Yeah. No, because I think this is significant. And Harold or David Wormser made a very interesting comment about this. So there was a year ago today, in Istanbul was this rally that took place.
Mm-hmm.
And it was led by Erdogan's son. And this was the poster that they used. And it's incredibly significant for a number of reasons. But it says a sun is rising. It was led by Erdogan's son. And they had one today, by the way, a pro-Palestinian rally this morning on the same bridge in Istanbul. 500,000 people showed up on New Year's morning. And there's something about this. So David Wormser, maybe before I do that, I should try to find a video file here. Hang on.
I mean, while you're looking for that, I mean, you've got Turkey really chomping at the bit to get into Gaza as one of their peacekeeping forces, and then you've got basically the Al-Jalani, the whole leadership there in Syria is Turkish, from my understanding. So they're making inroads into that area like crazy.
So
that I'd like to comment on. I completely respect.
Okay, hang on a second here. I'm going to move this back. Can you hear this?
Yeah.
Okay. This is about 3 weeks ago on I-24 News. This is Ruth Wasserman Land. She was an advisor to Shimon Peres. I think she's South African. She's lives in Israel, 4 kids, former member of Knesset. One of the most I'm trying to get an interview with her. She's phenomenal. But this is what she said about Turkey a few weeks ago. Syria. They were talking about Syria. What's going on with Syria? And here she goes. Okay, now it's not playing, is it?
I can't hear it now.
Okay, hang on a second here. Nope. I'm going to have to remove this. Okay. Try again. Oops. This is the problem with
technology.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's see if this one plays.
Now must Israel work to keep the Turks from the door?
So one issue that I'd like to comment on, I completely respect and agree with every word you said, but I would even go further and say that it's not that Israel is afraid that Turkey will take over or use Syria as a stepping stone towards Israel. I think that there is no longer a Syria. I think that it's a facade. I think that it's Turkey that we are facing. It's interesting that Asharia keeps saying that Israel is, in fact, in the southern part of Syrian soil, but it says no word about Turkey being in the northern part of Syrian soil, and not for a short while, but rather for a very long while. And this is something that is a huge issue. One, Turkey is a huge country, very geostrategically placed in terms of its geographic placing. Secondly, it's a NATO member. In terms of military might, it's very capable. And obviously supporting the Muslim Brotherhood ideology, having grown up on the, let's say, ideology of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, Erdogan is carrying out the absolute first stepping stones and the foundation of a future Ottoman Empire. He says it in his speeches. He speaks it in his actions. He is placing himself in Libya, in Sudan, in many places in Africa. He is the next Iran. And when Iran and the Shiite axis lowers or weakens, always the Sunni axis strengthens and vice versa. And this is something that it will eat from within the West if it doesn't wake up soon enough.
So anyway, so here's the screen. So I want to just give me a couple minutes here, Pete, to so this is the poster that Erdogan's son used a year ago. A sun is rising, And you'll see there's 3 pictures there. And David Wormser, in his interview on JNS today, just about 8 hours ago, you should go look that up. Go in about 9 minutes and listen for 10 minutes. You will get a semester worth of education about what's going on. But this is incredibly significant from a Bible prophecy standpoint. And so in the picture here on the left is Hagia Sophia. Let's see, maybe I can go to there we go. Hagia Sophia, the largest church ever built in Christianity. And at the top, it says, yesterday, Hagia Sophia. 5 years ago, Erdogan turned that into a mosque. And yesterday, Erdogan was at Hagia Sophia in the mosque leading prayers, reciting from the Quran. Erdogan, the president of Turkey. In the middle, it says, today Umayyad. So this is a year ago. This is right after the fall of the Syrian government to al-Shara, al-Julani, but it was a Turkish operation. Trump says this all the time. And it was, we took over Umayyad. And then on the right, it says tomorrow al-Aqsa. But the important thing right now, and this is the point that David Wormser was making in his interview today, I will talk a lot about this on Sunday, by the way. So I'll just give you the previews right now. The taking over of Damascus. And by the way, this brings in a lot of Bible prophecy. A lot of people talk about Isaiah 17 in terms of, oh, that's already been done. It's over and done with. I'm not one of those guys. I think it still is probably coming in to play again. And what Wormser said was that the taking over of Damascus was a very significant event in Sunni Islam. What Ruth Wasserman Landy was saying, Shia Islam declines, Sunni Islam fills the space. Wormser said, based on studies from Bernard Lewis and some of his people that he instructed, Damascus is central core to Sunni Islam, more so than Mecca or Medina. And so the way that the Sunnis and Erdogan are interpreting this is hugely significant prophetically, is that they are now coming back to restore the purity of the Umayyad Empire and getting back to the original intent and beliefs of Islam, the pure form of Islam without any of the corruption. This is how they view what's going on. And this is centered in Damascus. So I want you to remember that in light of Isaiah chapter 17, which says Damascus will cease from being a city. But it also says there's some other issues going on in northern Israel at the time all of this takes place. And I'm hearing reports. I saw the Israel guys today, the Wallers and Jeremy Gimpel and Ari Abramowitz talking about the fact that there are massive problems in Judea and Samaria with terrorism and guns and all of this stuff. And so you have Erdogan latching onto, I'm the pure guy in Sunni Islam and I'm taking over. His son's leading this rally a year ago and this morning. And just before I came in here, I was listening to a Turkish commentator from the Moshe Dayan Institute, Moshe Dayan Center on I-24 News. And he said they were demonstrating their Islamic purity by the way they conducted the march in Istanbul this morning. It was done early in the morning. They went to morning prayers at the mosque. They came to the bridge, 500,000. They rallied in favor of Palestine, but they did it to show We weren't out. We're good Muslims. We weren't out partying last night. We're the pure ones. We're restoring the beginnings of the Islamic Caliphate.
Yeah. That's
so incredibly important stuff that's going on as we speak.
So I mean, you've probably heard me say this before, but so my thoughts on Gog and Magog and how I think Turkey and all this kind of ties in together is that or the Iranian Revolution right now that's going on, the uprising, I think the reason why Persia is mentioned is because Persia is the only predominant Shia nation in the entire world. You know, you have Shia factions like Hezbollah and some other groups, little splinter terrorist groups and whatnot. But as far as a theocracy nation, it's just Iran. The rest of the Muslim world is Sunni. And so maybe that is why Persia is listed amongst these other nations that are also put there. So, but what it does show is that you have a global coalition of Sunni and Shia marching against Israel. So marching across the bridge is interesting because when they come against Israel, they're not shown riding tanks or planes or whatever. It's like it seems like they're on foot coming down or horseback or whatever. And when they are destroyed, when God supernaturally destroys them, that is going to create a significant vacuum in the world. When you take out, it's going to remove militant Islam as being a viable threat or potential threat going forward from that time going forward. So I think it's so catastrophic to Islam worldwide that's what opens up this vacuum for the beast kingdom to come out with this new, the harlot religion, whatever that's going to be. Maybe it incorporates some some tenets of Islam into it, like some kind of a watered down Chrislam, or it's going to incorporate Buddhism, Hinduism, and everything else in there. But
I'm going to disagree a little bit with you that a lot of that depends on the timing of Ezekiel 38. Is it before the 70th week? Is it at the beginning of it, or is it closer towards the end? Mm-hmm. I personally think I'm more and more of the mindset that it's closer towards the end. And so I think that the one who destroys it is Jesus, and it's part of the beast system that we see forming. And it's kind of interesting if you listen. In fact, remember Patrick was saying on the last roundtable we did, and we're going to talk more about this, that there's this tokenization. See, it's so fascinating because everything is connected. You know, it's like it's all jumbled up. It's like spaghetti in my brain, and everything's firing all at the same time. But in the reset, the financial reset that seems to be coming with cryptocurrency and everything, is tokenization of assets. And Patrick said this, and I've seen him say this a couple times recently, that this tokenization of assets has much more of a relationship to Islamic finance than the financial system that we have now. So it could be that this is part of the thing. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you're wrong on Ezekiel 38 timing. I personally I don't even think Ezekiel 38 war removes Islam as a problem until Jesus returns. I just don't think it's that. But you need to understand the mindset, and you know, where are the people going to come from that are going to set up this beast system, this beast empire? And a lot of people say, well, it's going to be centered in Europe, but then it's sort of like, well, wait a minute. Europe's turning Islamic by the day. I mean, there was just a big church in the Netherlands that was burned down last night. It's all over America. It's all over Texas where you live, Pete.
If Islam, let's just say hypothetical, well, so I hold that it's going to happen prior to the rapture, or just after the rapture, but before the 70th week. So think about this from a couple different perspectives. One, if you're a Muslim person, let's say you're a Muslim in Texas or Ohio or wherever, and you're watching this massive army of your fellow Muslim brothers marching against Israel, and they get supernaturally wiped out. I mean, it's catastrophic. I think that's it for you in terms of your militancy, like thinking Islam is the only way. Like, I think that's going to crush whatever thoughts you had that it is so overwhelmingly destructive to Islam. And it's such a calamitous. If Allah was true, then why weren't they victorious? They were just completely obliterated, right? That's one aspect of it.
So the response of, say, David Wormser and Bernard Lewis to that would be, no. It's just that it had a problem because it wasn't a pure enough form of Islam. Okay,
well, that's fine. But then the second aspect to this is you got to look at it from the Jewish perspective. The Jews they only use the Tanakh. They only use the Old Testament. They don't have a book of Revelation. They don't have the Olivet Discourse. They don't recognize anything in the New Testament. So at the end of that conflict, they think they're done. They think that was the battle to end all battles. And that's why they have no issues going. They think right now, if you watch the Israel guys and some of these other, they think they're in the Messianic era now.
It's on the verge of it, right?
On the verge of it, right? So at the end of this major calamity where the Muslim forces, the hordes are completely obliterated, they have no qualms going into any kind of a peace agreement with some new leader that rises up out of Europe that's like the European version of Donald Trump, who seems to be pro-Israel. He's like, absolutely, you guys can have your temple. You know, at the end of the Gog-Magog conflict, there's a massive earthquake. And to me, I think that's where Al-Aqsa Mosque gets turned into rubble. And that's what clears the path for them to build this third temple. And so they're not going to have the political pushback from the Muslim world after this major calamitous defeat of Islam. Both Sunni and Shia marching together against Israel, getting completely obliterated by God. Secondly, you have the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are completely wiped out or crumbled or whatever. And that clears the path for the Jews to put their new temple up there. And then lastly, the Jews think they're done. They don't see any future war beyond that, because when you read Ezekiel 38, 39, well, what follows? You have the next 8 chapters is all about the temple, so, and they don't have the New Testament. So I've gone back and looked into what did Jewish thinkers going back to like the second, third centuries, what did they think? This is the kind of common belief amongst all the different factions within Judaism, even folks that hold to Kabbalah and stuff like that. They all see like this Gog-Magog as the final war. So that's just my thoughts on it. I mean, I could be wrong too. So
and then it could be too that there's a precursor war that mimics Ezekiel 38, 39. That leads everybody to think, okay, this is it. So now we get our temple. And Islam always makes peace when they're weak, right? So let's say there's a sort of a precursor and they make an agreement when they're weak. I don't know. I just think it's sort of like I keep blowing up anything that I've ever done because I think it's the timelines are changing. So I'm going to share this screen. This was a billboard in Israel recently, put up by Abraham Shield. It's a sort of a think tank made up of a lot of people who think there could be a 2-state solution, and they talk about a technocratic governance in Gaza, which is kind of AI, Jared Kushner, his dream, and all this other stuff. And all the tech bros were going to in smart cities, and you can see what's the latest plan, Project Sunrise or something like that. Mm-hmm. But they put this poster up last fall in Israel, and it's kind of interesting. Not from this is prophetic or this is the way it's going to be. It's the imagery and the numbers. So you have Trump and Netanyahu there, and then you have Arab leaders, of which there are 10 kings. And it's just kind of interesting. So is this a precursor, sort of an idea as to how this might happen? And the answer is, I don't really know. I just think that it's like I say, keep your charts and graphs and everything in PowerPoint so you can edit them quickly, and make it look like you never taught that. I've been teaching this for years, so I sort of take a broader thing. Like I'm trying to cover all my bases. It's not. I believe all this stuff will happen. It's sort of like Babylon. And didn't you do an article recently on Mystery Babylon?
I did one on Mystery Babylon Incorporated, and then the one that I dealt with this particular topic was called this little piggy.
So where do you think Mystery Babylon is? I want to get everybody mad at you. So,
well, okay. So for the Andy Woods crowd, I have a hard time seeing Iraq being the traditional side of Babylon. I was there for a year in 2005, 2006. I don't think it's changed a whole lot.
Right on, fist bump there.
Oh, yeah.
Fist bump. I am that the whole reason, Pete, that I developed the logistics part of my grid, acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding was Babylon in Iraq.
Yeah.
Because I know there's building going on there, but I keep saying Rome wasn't built in a day, and Mystery Babylon won't be either.
So with that said, if you look back at the ancient boundaries of Babylon, the kingdom of Babylon, Nemo, or was it Nemo?
Neom
fits within the boundaries. I think it'll be within the boundaries somewhere over there, but I don't know that it's going to be within the geographical confines of the borders of Iraq right now, simply because even if they were to rebuild Hilla, whatever it is right there, the area
it's a town near
south of Baghdad, 60 kilometers south of Baghdad, you're still 100 miles from the coast. I mean, you're not going to be able to see, the shipmasters are not going to be able to see your city burning just simply due to the curvature of the earth and how far away it is. So they would have to do major dredging operations, expanding the waterways up into the center of Iraq, which, building the city might be done in a couple of years, but then you're talking about the dredging operations and getting and to what end? Right. I mean, you bring ships up there that have to try and turn around and come right back out. I mean, or they're going to try and connect it all the way through. Israel was looking at creating an alternative to the Suez Canal on the other side of the
right
peninsula there.
Well, that was the whole IMEC corridor thing. It would go through Saudi Arabia.
And so that to me seems more realistic than dredging into Iraq, because to what end? Are you going to dredge through the whole country and try and create a northern passageway through Iraq? You're talking about mountainous country. I mean, it's lowlands there at the beginning, and then it turns into mountains. And then, I mean, it just seems, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand but anyways, I don't think it's America. I think that the Beast Kingdom will incorporate, it'll be like an imperial regional structure at first, right? Because the way I've always kind of pictured it was, if you're Satan, and let's play devil's advocate here. If you're Satan and you've got to get every country in the world under one system, right now there's 193 different countries in varying states of currencies and economic position, status, political, sovereignty. Some are falling apart. Some are better shaped than others, etc. Different religious. How do you do that? You get them into regions first. You get them blocked into regions. So you break those regions down. Let's say they break them into 10 regions. Well, then it's easier to get 10 regions come together than it is 193 different nations. So you get them into regions first through some type of political agreements. The U.S. Army, the Club of Rome, not the U.S. Army, the Department of Defense, the Club of Rome, a lot of different groups have already kind of grouped the world into economic zones, etc. So I think that's much more likely that will happen first. And whatever the center part of, what the U.S. calls CENTCOM, Central Command, that area there, basically incorporating everything from Israel all the way through Afghanistan, that somewhere within that confines could be a rebuilt Babylon that is on the waterway, that is on close to the ocean, that doesn't need to have all that maritime architecture built into it. Like, we're not think about redoing the Panama Canal, you know, how long that took. I know that was years ago, but I mean, you're talking about an operation even further than that to go all the way through the border of Iraq or to connect it to some other major waterway.
Right, right.
So anyways.
So this is the image that I put up. This is a project, and you might recognize that little black thing down in the lower right-hand corner. That's the Kaaba in Mecca. And of course, you have the Royal Clock Tower, one of the tallest buildings on earth, which kind of would fit to me changing times and seasons because they want to move the world to Islamic time. But this is it's called King Salman Gate. All of these built apartment buildings and skyscrapers built facing the Kaaba. And what I'm saying is, so this is a project that the Saudis are funding right now. And I just think this is going to be built before anything in Iraq, at least the way that it's going right now. So I don't know. I'm just saying as I watch this, I see what's going on with Neom and Riyadh and the Muqab and all this stuff. And so I think it's a very open question. I don't think it's as tightly wrapped up as some of our colleagues think. So I take an open mind, and I just bring it up because I like tweaking people a little bit too. So,
you know, and this is one of those topics, you know, same with Gog and Magog, that, you know, we're all going to have to hold these theories loosely because simply they haven't happened yet. And the scripture is I don't want to say ambiguous enough that you can read it into like many different kind of scenarios, but you kind of can, because it doesn't list out exactly how it tells us how it's going to play out. It doesn't tell us how exactly it's going to play out. So
remember I think I've used this joke I heard a long time ago that the 30 minutes of silence in the 70th week that's for all prophecy teachers to update their prophecy charts. And then I also have said this, that I know that the menu at the marriage supper of the Lamb will include copious amounts of humble pie for people to eat. So, because I don't know, sometimes they think God's kind of sitting up there like, well, everybody thinks they got this all figured out and everything like this. Hey, so this is crazy, the stuff that's going on. Let's look at, so you took the time to send me a great little summary. What do you think is coming in 2026?
Okay, so speaking specifically to the United States, so for our viewers from Canada and Australia and UK and other places, I mean, this would be just, you know, unique to the United States, but I think what we've seen thus far in 2025 with the exposure, the national exposure of the fraud scandals in places like Minnesota and Ohio, as well as now California to a much greater degree, it's showing a pattern where whether you have a deep blue state that's voted a Democrat for the last 20, 30 years, kind of, and those states have always been blue. I think that there's been so much systemic fraud that this stuff we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, and this is going to have significant economic ramifications for these states that we'll start to see kind of state governments collapse. Kind of in the same way we're seeing it in a micro level with like Chicago, the city of Chicago, their city council and other places where the governments, they can't even come up with a budget because they're so far in the red. Now that said, there are red states that have, you know, blue cities, you know, that are Democrat cities, like, you know, Texas is a red state, but Austin is very liberal. Dallas is very liberal. And so I think the cities, and the problem is the same problem that Iran has. You have ideological zealots, where in Iran, they might be zealots for Shia Islam, and on the Democrat Party, it's increasingly become progressivism, leftism. They're ideologues who they don't base their policies in reality. They don't base their ideology in reality. It's not sustainable, the things that they're proposing. Thus, the chickens have come home to roost finally, that now we're coming to this crunch time, and we're seeing this play out economically with places like California, where you and I were talking earlier, you have 3 of the major refineries leaving the state and saying, "Hey, we're out. We can't afford to stay here because your environmental policies are so restrictive." The northern refinery there, I think it was the Valero. They are, the Valero Benicia refinery. It was costing them like $2 million a day. They were losing, or some astronomical number. Like, hey, and then the policies that were set to take place here in 2026, that's why they packed up, said, "Hey, we're done, we're out," and just almost the same way that Oracle did. Oracle did a one-line memo. It was part of their filing on like a Friday afternoon at the closing of the markets, and in one line saying, "Hey, we are allowing our employees to work, giving them freedom to work from wherever. And by the way, we're really relocating our headquarters to Texas." And so you have 3 refineries responsible for upwards of 20% of the state's fuel refinery, in a state that already has the highest gas taxes or gas prices out of any of the continental states. And think about the economic ramifications of how much that's going to tax on to anything that's shipped from California that comes in through the port of Los Angeles or wherever. Now that cost is going to go up, which is going to be transferred to the customer. And then you have 1 million plus employees in the state of California who are in some way tied to the energy sector. So they're going to be losing their jobs, and this is going to be a huge impact to them as well.
Right. Yeah, so that could very well be. I don't know what this Somalian fraud is going to be. We have about 100,000 Somalians in the Columbus area, and but a lot of it, you're right. I mean, the no use of the unsustainable policies. The green agenda is collapsing all over the place, but they're doubling down. So I would watch in a few weeks. You're going to see the World Economic Forum. I think it's going to be in Davos again. I heard it was moving to Riyadh, but I think it's going to be in Davos again. So pay attention to what's discussed there, because you're going to see, I think, these people double down on their agenda.
Yeah, and they will. But you look at, as I mentioned earlier, New York City is going to, their corporate real estate, commercial real estate there, I would estimate that their vacancies are going to go through the roof, which is then causing the city to lose money. So every place that these progressive politicians have taken over, even from the Democrats, and are imposing increasingly greater and greater radical laws, and like soft on crime. As long as you steal under, what was it, $999, they don't call the police or whatever. So corporations are leaving. Places are leaving San Francisco left and right because they can't afford to stay there and keep losing the amount of product everywhere. They're losing money. It's becoming very hostile to businesses to operate. So a lot of these places are leaving California. They're leaving New York. They're leaving Illinois. They're leaving, a lot of the northeastern states, and they're moving to the business-friendly states, Virginia, Texas, Florida, and other places. So I just see this migration within the United States really kind of reshaping a lot of the way that the states currently are in a far greater fashion than anything we've seen probably thus far. Number 2 is the regime changes. I think around the world, obviously we're on the verge of one right now. So it wouldn't be so bold for me to say I think Iran's going to undergo a regime change. I think it's kind of almost pretty obvious right now. But I think we also see this in Venezuela as well, with the ouster of Maduro, and however that takes place, I think we'll see it in 2026. Cuba is another place that is, a friend of mine, she's been down to Cuba a number of times, and I was like, who's in charge down there? She's like, I don't know. I don't know that the people know. It's just somebody from I don't know if Castro's brother's still alive. He's got to be in his 90s. He's about to expire. So as soon as he dies, that whole thing may fall apart. Likely places that we might see political, I would say regime change per se, but like You've got the 4 or 5 Western provinces of Canada all they're all voting, and they're all doing this very legally, looking to secede from Eastern Canada, from Ontario, and from the eastern states where the governments run everything. So what they look like in the next year, I think we're going to start to see the fracturing of Canada to a far greater degree than we've seen. Thus far, it's all been kind of just been done through votes and through the legal process. But now I think we're going to start seeing it actually taking place. You have obviously the issues going on with Ukraine. I think at some point there's going to have to be some type. I think they just had a strike against Putin's house. So they launched a missile against his house. So I don't see Putin taking that line down. I think he is going to exact revenge on Ukraine. I think whatever happens with Ukraine, I think it'll probably be played out this year in 2026. And Russia will probably end up with a lot more of Ukraine than what they had intended beyond the Donetsk region. So I think that Ukraine is pretty much a failed state at this point. And then you have populism across the EU. You've got the AfD, they call it the far right party there in Germany, but it's the most popular party right now. And we've had, I think about 14 of their political members within a span of like 2 weeks mysteriously died. This was this past year, but I think the AfD may end up taking we're seeing populism kind of breaking out across Europe, especially in places where they've tried to force this immigration from the Middle East into these communities, and it's just not working out. Denmark is taking a hard stand against immigration, just like Italy has. Poland has. I think Austria or Hungary. No, I'm thinking Hungary. And so I think that populism may sweep across the EU, and they may have their own version of a Donald Trump that rises up that helps solidify. And the EU itself may see that as a bona fide, as a bonus, because what has the EU been trying to do all along? They've been trying to unify all of Europe together by force, but they've been doing it very bureaucratically. And like I've said for a long time, nobody gets excited about bureaucracy. Nobody does. But if you had a dynamic European leader that rises up like their version of a Donald Trump that is a populist leader, and they could even bring back in this idea of marketing themselves as Rome 2.0. I mean, I think the EU, the elite there, could rally around a guy like that. If whoever he is, he's the guy that's going to unify Europe in a way that they weren't unable to do for the last 30, 40 years through all these treaties. They're still not coalescing very well. So that's how I see kind of the EU coming together. But that's not obviously all going to happen in 2026, but we may start to see it gain traction in 2026.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to see a lot of wars. I think Iran could fall. It's so interesting to watch what's going on in Israel, in a war for the last 2 years and GDP up 25%. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whether the people on what I would call the woke right in America don't like it, don't like Israel, and I see it all the time now. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest with you, I'm very concerned with these chuckleheads that TPUSA invites to speak at their conference. I mean, is there anybody doing any kind of a gatekeeper on what's going on there? I mean, listen, the fact that Tucker Carlson is a rank anti-Semite now is so far beyond being an established fact. I don't understand it. Okay. I'm not saying don't let him speak. He's got a platform way bigger than us. Nobody's trying to shut him down. When he says people are trying to shut him down, he's lying. He is a abject, anti-Semitic, Jew-hating liar. And I don't know what benefit TPUSA sees in having him there. I just think it's crazy. It's just, I don't know. It bothers me. And I was critical of him being there, before Charlie was assassinated. I don't know what's going on. All I can tell you is I don't like what I'm seeing. And I think that Trump and JD Vance have been kind of weak on the Israel issue. And I think there's a political reason for that. because it's they want to keep their coalition together because midterms are coming up.
Yeah.
And if Trump's going to accomplish anything in his last 2 years, 3 years, they've got to do well in these midterms this fall. And that's in 2026. So they're gonna waffle on Israel. They're gonna try to dance around the issue to protect the anti-Israel people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Tucker Carlson and all that stuff. And it's going to be a real messy thing, and it's going to be something that we don't want to see, but we're going to see it.
Yeah, and well, you know, you've got the Groypers, you've got the anti-Israel section of the MAGA party, which is disturbingly, like you said, growing. But I think the other downside to the Republican Party is the old dynasties that don't want to let go of power. So they're now creating the resistance to Trump on the policies that he does want to do that is good. Like, for instance, you know, bringing down pharmacy prices, you know, medicine prices, or keeping the border closed, or shutting down illegal immigration, or all these other kinds of things that we can see the benefit of that doesn't necessarily tie in with Bible prophecy, but is good for the people that live in these areas where the crime is starting to drop and things like that. You've got these guys giving so much pushback that it's their own political agendas to get back into power and to oust the whole MAGA movement, or to co-opt it into something that they can lead themselves. So I think Trump is having to balance a lot of the enemies on the left to the enemies on the right, and even within his own circle, his own camp, he's got the enemies. And it's better than it was in his first term. I mean, you saw how little he was able to get done in his first term with the amount of enemies he had, even within his own cabinet and with his own, you know, like, oh my gosh, who was the DA, not the DA, yeah, or the head of the
DOJ.
DOJ.
Pat Bondi.
Yeah, but who was the guy in the first term toward the end?
I
could see his face.
Oh, and the Attorney General.
Yeah, the Attorney General, Robert Bob something, I don't know. Anyways, that guy was a big turd. But anyways, it was guys like that to Trump's face, they would be like, "Oh yeah, we're going to do what you want," and then behind his back, they were, you know, trying to.
Oh, Bob Barr.
Bob Barr. Same with Milley. Same with all those other guys that were actively working against him. So you have the enemies from within as well that are all trying to dethrone the king and set themselves up, or set the Bush the third, or whoever the new, I don't know, George Bush the third, or whatever the youngest of the guys is now. They're still, you know, butthurt over getting, you know, losing the nomination the first time around in 2016. So you have those kind of parties, the establishment Republicans, you've got the quasi-libertarians that just want to be contrarians on everything, also working against Trump. So he's got his hands full domestically, with just even within his own party. I think for the midterms, and I, you know, when I look at politics, I'm about 50-50 on my accuracy. So, I mean, I looked at Mamdani and I thought, there's no way they're going to vote this guy. This guy is a, you know, he doesn't, he's young. He's never done anything. I mean, he just got demolished in their little primaries there that they had by Cuomo. I mean, just destroyed him to his face. And Mamdani just smiled the whole time. So he knew something was afoot. So I think if they can get their handle on the voter fraud, which they seem to have tried to be, they're making headway a lot more than I thought they would this first year, but then get the voter fraud stuff under wraps across the board. I think there's a good chance that the Republicans hold the House and the Senate. Now, there's so many things politically. I mean, this could take another hour to go through, but there's a lot of things the Republicans could be doing right now that they're not. To like the nuclear vote in the Senate, they could obviously change that, and they should change that, because the minute the Democrats take power, that's the first thing they're gonna do. But you know, here's some wild cards for 2026 that we don't know. Black swan events, whatever. You have like the death of Xi Jinping. If he dies, I mean, that's going to be an interesting time to see what happens with who takes over China and all that, how that all shakes out. That could be a Berlin Wall kind of moment, or it could get way, way worse. It could be some general that nobody saw coming takes over, and he is twice as ruthless and wants to just squash Taiwan or squash anybody, his neighbors, etc. So that is a wild card, or even the death of any particular powerful leader, including Trump. I mean, if he had a health problem or whatever, like those deaths. When a leader like that, or Abe Shinzo, the leader of Japan, Abe, yeah, whatever his name was, when he got assassinated, that shakes things up. So anytime there's a death of the head leader, it's going to be troubling times for a short period of time until somebody takes over. I still think, and I still hold to the idea that Israel will annex Judea and Samaria. I think that there's no way that they can get to this position of peace and security when you have your own heartland is still kind of intermixed with all these terrorist groups that are still operating within there. I don't know what the conditions are that allow them to do that politically. I think they've already voted at the Knesset, and they voted to annex it. I don't know. It was kind of one of those symbolic votes or whatever. It was when J.D. Vance was visiting there. I think that we'll move from, in terms of the UAP, UFO stuff, I think we're going to move from disclosure to confirmation at some point in 2026. It may be a soft confirmation where, I don't know. I do think that that's coming in 2026. And then I think at some point, and we may talk more about this in the roundtable, but I think we'll hit AGI in 2026 at the speed everything's going right now. Why not?
Well, and then I guess a black swan, almost a sort of a black swan event in that area would be quantum computing getting to somewhat of a stable thing. Then everything changes.
Yeah. I mean, quantum. That's the thing. That's the big difference between AI and quantum, right? So quantum is not limited by the power limitations. It's not restrained by the power limitations that AI has. So AI needs this vast amount of the data farms and data centers, and it needs all this power generation. But quantum is the platform itself. And so you as long as you've got the temperature control, the near near perfect zero or whatever it is, or absolute zero temperature, which if they want to move some of these things into space, they could easily do that. And operate.
Elon says it makes economic sense now.
Yeah. So,
and they have the ability to use solar power to generate the power they need up there is thousands and thousands of times more capable up there than it is here. So
how easy would it be for him to just on one of his Starlink launches, put some kind of quantum system up there,
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, I was thinking about data farms, and then they have the ability, they can communicate like by lasers and stuff because there's no atmospheric interference, and so everything could be generated and communicated at the speed of light. So and then you add quantum on top of that, and I don't know. This is it's like Babel's being reversed, isn't
it? Yeah. I mean, it just seems like, 5 years ago, or even say 4 years ago, we're talking about AI. I mean, we're still thinking like 2030, we would be where we are today at like 2030. And when we think back to COVID, there was a great article by a guy, and he was explaining that COVID, because it forced everybody back home and everybody had to be on the network, it forced the network the bandwidth to get strengthened, to go from like 4G to 5G down to soon to be 6G. And that sped us up, technologically speaking. It sped us up as a nation, as a society, as a world, like 6 years. Sped things up by 6 years. So I think AI, had COVID not happened, had we not had the shutdown where everybody is working, we just go into office every day, we probably would get there by 2030, but that sped things up by 6 years. So I think that achieving AGI, well, honestly, I think we probably already have it. It's probably on some network system that's not linked to the internet. It's probably some deep bowels of some type of DARPA facility that they have something already like to that extent, but they don't have it connected to anything. So, but the chances of them doing it, as fast as things have been dropping, you know, all these new updates to Chat GPT and OpenAI, or was it DeepMind and Google's,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't think of all the different platforms that are out there now, but I mean, somebody's going to get there, I imagine, very quickly.
So maybe we should wrap this up, because and we really appreciate everybody listening for the time that did. But I'm going to let you finish this up with one last question, and take a minute and tell us everything we need to know about disclosure.
1 minute?
Yeah, you know, well, 2 minutes, but just tell us what you think is coming in 2026.
Okay, so I did the whole program with Mondo, no, with Lee, but I also did a program before that with Mondo called What Lurks Above, but we touched on it there. And then with Lee, we talked about the history from Roswell, you know, that happened in July 1947, 6 months before the UN, or 4 months before the UN vote. And before that, even before Roswell, you had the Babylon Working Group with Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard in the desert. That was 18 months prior, that he invoked some kind of demonic entity. Instead of us going to the stars, you know, bringing the stars to the earth. And then you had Roswell. Then you had the UN vote for the partitioning of Israel between a Jewish and an Arab state, the rebirth of Israel. So I think from that moment on, things begin to speed up incredibly in terms of the visitations that we've had from these anomalous things coming in space, you know, out of the skies, right? And it's varied from country to country. It's been global. It's been a global phenomenon. Every country's had some type of experiences with this. So there's been at least, you know, the neighborhood of like 1 million sightings a year. Most of these things can be answered, you know, it's a balloon, it's this, it's that. I mean, there's a lot of explanations, but there's still about 5 to 10% of this stuff that is 100% verifiable that it happened, like with a lot of these Navy jets that capture these things on their FLIR cameras and stuff, the forward-looking infrared cameras, as well as radar, multi-sensored platforms capture these anomalies. So we know they're real. We know that they're operating over our very sensitive sites, nuclear facilities, military facilities, etc. So back then, Senator Marco Rubio, I think in 2017, they had one of the early disclosure kind of panel hearings, whatever, in Congress. The concern shifted from what are they to why are they a national security threat? And once they framed it in that perspective, the government really began to kind of turn direction and say that we need to figure this out, because it's happening to the Russians, it's happening to the Chinese, it's happening to us. And we need to know what these things are flying over our sensitive military sites and nuclear facilities, et cetera. So that, I think, is, once they caged it into that light, I think that's what's driving all the recent pushes for more and more disclosure. We've had in the November, the documentary, the Age of Disclosure. I think they brought on like 34 incredibly credible witnesses with the highest classification rankings that you could have, you know, SCI, top secret with SCI clearances, you know, on and on and on. And these guys have everything to lose and nothing to gain necessarily from coming forward. They're absolutely convinced, both some of them like David Grush and David Fravor and these other guys, claiming, you know, David Fravor, for example, I mean, he saw that. He was flying with this thing, trying to keep up with this thing, and he was outpacing our best technology. And he's like, there's nothing we have that even comes close to what that is. So we know it's real. Now I have my ideas on it. I think it's fallen angels. I think they're different hierarchies within the fallen angel ranks, right? Within just like in the holy angel ranks, there's hierarchies. I think within the fallen angel ranks, there's hierarchies as well. And they're able to use this type of technology to deceive mankind. Now, Steven Spielberg has his movie coming out this summer called Disclosure Day. So we can see the I think the general population, most people believe in aliens, what they call aliens. I think across not just the U.S., the UK, Europe, etc., most people either have had an experience or know somebody that's had an experience that they can't explain, that defies reality or whatever. So I think people are very eager for this to come out. And one idea that Jacques Vallée has put forth for a number of years is that this technology seems to be based on deceiving our conscious. It's some type of a conscious-based technology that is able to affect how we see and understand reality, and that they're coming for nefarious purposes, not for good purposes. And so there seems to be a hostile bent to this event, phenomena, whatever that's coming out. So I think, but going back to disclosure itself, and I think to confirmation, is the idea that they're going to couch this in national security. It's in the national security interests of the United States to come out and finally release all this information. If there's any president that would do this, it's Trump. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if any guy's going to do it, it's probably going to be him or Vance. I could see either one of those two guys saying, "Hey,
I guess I just kind of have. I'll be honest with you. I've not spent a lot of time studying it. There's a lot of people have spent a lot more time. There's almost a cottage industry in our community that's grown up around this issue over the years. So my point has been, I think, for a long time, that it could happen. I won't be surprised if it does happen. You have to be very careful it doesn't shake your faith. And sometimes I think there's enough deception in the world going on right now. I don't think Satan needs to do a bunch of fake aliens to deceive people. That's my opinion. So I don't know.
I look at it like this. Like, Satan knows what his end state is, and he's not doing any half measures. He's playing for. He's throwing everything in the kitchen sink at this. So he spent the last 70 plus years building up this deception, building up this, both with the government's denial early on that opened a vacuum for Hollywood to step in and just fill everybody's minds with this stuff for the last 70 plus years, to include, to a large measure, Steven Spielberg with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., the Taken series. I mean, he's wholly vested in this idea. And I think one of the big takeaways from this movie, at least the trailer that we've seen, is that it's not showing aliens coming down. It's showing people on Earth being activated in a way that could be used to explain away the rapture when it does happen. So this is all couched around this idea, because Satan is going to have some type of global, worldwide level distraction to cover for this worldwide crisis that will happen. That when the rapture happens, whenever that happens, it is going to be a global event, and he's going to need a global level distraction.
Yes. So in less than 3 weeks, Davos World Economic Forum starts in Davos, Switzerland, and the title of the World Economic Forum meeting, the theme is a spirit of dialogue. And so I'm sort of sitting here thinking, as you're talking, it's sort of like, do you think they would let me come and talk about my pro-Israel Zionist Bible prophecy views at a World Economic Forum meeting? And part of me thinks that probably not. And in fact, if I just disappeared, they would be okay with that. And they wouldn't, we got rid of the people who were the problem.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they'll need, I don't know. I just am not convinced that they need to explain it, because it'll be, I don't know. I just think that it'll be interesting.
We know in 2 Thessalonians 2, it says that when the lawless one comes, it's going to come with all power, lying, signs, and wonders. So I think whenever the rapture happens, the second after that it happens, the world's going to go into supernatural mode. It'll be natural 1 second, and then everything is going to be supernatural at the next. And so I think that, he's going to use whatever he can to deceive the world. And what better way to unite the world than a alien event, some type of aliens or fallen angels don't need ships. They don't need technology to fly or do anything like that. But Tim Chaffee, who had the book, The Nephilim, The Sons of God and the Nephilim, Fallen, The Sons of God and the Nephilim, was a fantastic book. he said that what's interesting about this type of demonic deception is that through the ages, the fallen angels use the technology of the day and the threats of the day. So if you lived in the Middle Ages, the demonic deception would be in the form of like vampires and werewolves and witches and fairies and, you know, things that would be in the dark forest. And as technology has gone more and more, and people don't live in forests anymore, so I mean, the deception's got to match the technology of the age that they're in, so that it's always kind of evolving as well. So I don't know. I mean, again, that's just the theory, but we'll see how it all kind of shakes out.
Okay. Well, look, Pete, thanks. I'm glad you suggested this. And we failed at even scratching the surface.
Yeah. A couple more hours.
I've been at this for a long time, and we talked about this when we were together in Texas. It's like, it's relentless now. It never stops. And you put up a video and you hope that it has a shelf life of 2 days.
Yeah.
You know, you do all that work. So, you know, it used to be we'd put up something in the teaching. Okay, well, yeah, that's relevant 10 years later, but I don't think it necessarily is right now because things change so quickly. So my advice to everybody here is pay attention, stay in the Word, fellowship with other believers, and pay attention to Turkey, because I think that's incredibly significant. So I'm going to be doing some interviews with people in Israel, hopefully Ruth Wasserman Land. I think she's fantastic. And some other people. I've got a stack of cards like this that I got from Israel of people to talk to and interview that I think have relevant information. So pray those all come together. And Pete, thanks. And we'll see you in 13 days, January 14th, 8 p.m. East, no, 7 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Eastern for the next technology, technocracy, transhumanism roundtable. Patrick Wood, Scott Townsend, Britt Gillette, Pete, and myself. Maybe somebody else will be joining us. And anything else you want to say, Pete, as we sign off for the night?
Yeah, I'll be on Monday with Britt, so we'll try and not talk about technology so specifically. That way we'll save that for the roundtable. But I'll have Britt on Monday night on my Monday Night Live. So
the young boys, the young bros. Anyway, Pete, thanks a lot. I'll say goodbye on the other side. Everybody, thanks for watching. Like, follow, share, subscribe, all that stuff that helps the algorithm. Thank you, everybody. Good night.